It's the Bottom Line podcast here on the Blood Red channel, courtesy of the Liverpool Echo. I'm Guy Clarke. Welcome along. As the Reds begin their Far East tour of Thailand and Singapore, I'm joined by our business of football writer, Dave Powell, to chat through the implications financially for the Reds, as well as taking on Manchester United, but what the tour means for the sponsorship dealings ahead of the new season getting underway. Dave, I hope you're well. And as I say, the tour underway, and one of those, isn't it? As soon as you see Liverpool touch down, you realise just the global magnitude and scale of the football club. We talk so often about the reach it has around the world, but it's not really until you see all those people you realise actually just how big it all is.
Oh, it's enormous. The pull of the football club and the global reach that it has is. There's only about 3 or 4 teams, 5 maybe in European football that can match that kind of football fandom that the Reds enjoy over in. It's not just Asia; it's in the US, etc. But specifically in Asia, I think Manchester United were one of the first to tap into that market back in the late 1990s when they were going out on pre-season tours, and they saw the value in that. And Liverpool have really made strides in that respect. And from our boots on the ground with Ian Doyle, I believe, in him speaking to some of the locals, he said that the pendulum has now swung the other way in terms of Liverpool's direction, in terms of how popular they are in Thailand. So I'll be intrigued to see how it pans out. Obviously, the United game, as we speak, is happening just prior to this going out. So I'll be interested to see how it all transpires.
It will certainly be interesting to see how it transpires. But obviously, our main focus with events kind of off the pitch, as you say, I'm sure a number of that support may well have swung the other way of the pendulum, the success the Reds have had on the pitch during the intervening years to which they've been out there. But it's been a while, hasn't it, since the Reds have actually had the chance to get abroad and get out on one of these pre-season tours.
Yeah, it was the summer of 2019. I think they went to South Bend, Boston and New York as part of their pre-season preparations for the 1920 season. Obviously, the pandemic has impacted the last 2 summers, meaning it's stopped not just Liverpool but every major football club from going on pre-season tours, and they've become lucrative affairs. Pre-season tours for football clubs, it's a way to engage with commercial partners, whether existing or potential, and it's a way of also engaging with a fan base that doesn't get the chance to visit Anfield or come to games. I mean, and they get to feel part of it physically. They get to kind of lay their eyeballs onto their heroes, in the flesh. So these are valuable things, and there's. While Jurgen Klopp, I'm sure, has enjoyed the past couple of summers in terms of preparation, and they go to Evian, don't they? They go to Austria, they do smaller camps, and there'll be an element of that this season. The long haul trips to the Far East, etc., aren't always the favourites of football managers because they're so kind of labour intensive. They're relentless. The players have, if they're not training, they need, and you're on a time difference as well. If they're not training, they are making personal appearances. There's huge teams go across on these, so backroom teams, commercial staff, all sorts. It really is a huge operation, these pre-season tours. And while Klopp would rather it be a bit more low key, and their trips abroad be just where they are going to kind of Germany and Austria. For the club, it's vitally important that these pre-season tours are back, and because they've had a couple of years away, they've had to come back with a bang.
Yeah, definitely. We saw that, didn't we, when they got to the airport and James Milner and Jordan Henderson were with Jurgen Klopp, kind of speaking about their previous experiences of coming over, and they are lucratively rich, but equally, as you say, of the fans being able to see the players. In terms of the importance of them, just how significant is it that Liverpool do go and do these tours? Because obviously, whilst they're out there, they're playing Manchester United, they're playing Crystal Palace in Singapore on Friday as well. There is a sporting element to it, which obviously feeds into why the fans come and watch the games. But even the training sessions and things, you see just hordes and hordes of people there, and commercially, how much success can be driven from that?
There's a lot of commercial partners which Liverpool have. all over the globe. Asia, a particular part of that, they've got a number of commercial partnerships with firms in Asia, and part of those commercial partnerships, when they're signed, a number of factors are written into them. So, visibility on a pre-season tour, marketing appearances of players, things like that. So there are a number of boxes which the club also has to tick when they sign these particular deals. And obviously, the pandemic, there's nothing you can do to get around that. The fact that they couldn't travel overseas and engage in them in the way they'd like, but some concessions would have had to be made. But now that things have opened up again, there is an expectation, I suppose, from these firms that the clubs get out there and they kind of earn their money almost. Their meetings are plentiful when they're out there discussing, whether it's existing partnerships that they're discussing, ways that they can do things differently moving forward. The marketing appearances of players. That's why Liverpool take over a number of Liverpool legends. So this year, I think it might be 6 or 7 Liverpool legends who've gone over this year. Jason McAteer among them. I think Ian Rush, Luis Garcia, players like that, or former players like that, because it's so intensive, the schedule, apparently, that it's impossible just to get the players just to be here, there, and everywhere. So, but these sponsors want a physical presence. They want to be able to see Liverpool in the flesh and their heroes, etc. So the legends have been a vital part of that, and also it's been important for Liverpool because they've got a number of huge commercial deals coming up for renewal. The standard chartered front of shirt sponsorship ends at the end of the 2022-23 season, so this season coming. Same for Expedia on the shirt sleeve. So there are deals, major deals to be struck in the coming weeks and months. But it would be undoubtedly there's conversations being had with potential parties over there over who may be interested in taking these slots. I mean, I know that Liverpool don't have to announce their own front of shirt sponsorship until early first quarter of 2023. So they've got some time, but I anticipate that announcement will arrive a lot sooner than that, a lot sooner. So they're vitally important, and Liverpool they've grown the brand since the last time we were out there as well. So the last time they were out there in 2019. They just won the Champions League, hadn't they? But they've not had that Premier League title yet, and that success hadn't really been sustained. And since then, the size of the club, the pull, the reach, their global branding has rocketed even further. And with Salah being signed to a new contract, you've got Darwin Núñez out there now. Everyone wants a piece of the action with Darwin Núñez. Want to see what he's all about. And then you've got Klopp's new deal. They go in there in a really great space, so it's a really, really good time for him to make some headway. And I think it's likely that they will take that position of the dominant force in Asia fairly soon off Manchester United if their aggression continues at Old Trafford, which it has done, because ultimately people want to be attached with success. So, and Liverpool being a heavy presence out there certainly chimes with that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I suppose, as you were saying there, I was going to come back and say, obviously, 2019, the tour was out to America. I think it's the first time they've been out to Asia since 2017, when Mohamed Salah had only just signed for the club, let alone gone on to have the exploits he's had even prior to signing that new contract. How's it devised then that Liverpool go... This time they go, right, okay, we'll go out to Asia. I mean, how much talk is there behind the scenes with other clubs of coordinating? Because last time, I think in 2019, when they were in America again, Manchester United were out there at the same time as well. Is it a kind of a wink, wink, nudge, nudge, right, let's both head out to the same area of the world together? Because as the two biggest players within the Premier League commercially, therefore all eyeballs really are on both clubs, and both have a chance to be in the spotlight, rather than one be in America and one be in Asia.
I'm not too sure, because United's last one I think was Australia. So I don't know whether it's just these have come around fairly kind of it's fairly coincidental, but for a first game back, both clubs will know that having a game like United Liverpool, especially with everything attached to it. So United have got Ten Hag in place now. Liverpool have got new players. There's new dynamic for both teams. So there'll be a lot of eyeballs on Manchester United Liverpool. So I dare say it's one of the most marketable games that you could possibly have. and two of the biggest teams in that region. So for them, they're probably thinking, because the TV rights over there are sold independently. So it's one of the very rare chances that Liverpool have to kind of make more TV revenue on top of what they already get. So, and given the fact that it's screened on LFC TV, etc., I mean the rights are sold for a considerable amount. So, and United would be showing the game themselves on MUFC TV or MUTV, or whatever it's called. So there'll be the potential for more eyeballs on those games and making it even more valuable is obviously there. But for the most part, I thought more teams this year would make a play to go to the US, but I think that may happen. I think Liverpool and United are going to be going back to the US in the next 2 summers because the game is booming, the rights are booming over there. We just had a £2 billion Premier League TV deal inked in the past few months. You've got the World Cup in 2026. The dynamic is very much shifting to football becoming a major player over there. So I do think that Liverpool and United have already got that. They're firmly rooted in America and away through ownership. So I imagine more of that over the next couple of summers. But this one, certainly, it was important that Liverpool went to Asia, I think, because they haven't been there since 2017. And the impact of the pandemic, it's important that you helped kind of massage some of those relationships and make sure that they were, firmly rooting themselves in the psyche in Asia, I suppose, in terms of being the biggest club and making sure that Manchester United didn't kind of make any ground on them in that respect. Because with the Nike deal as well, I mean, we mentioned previously, I mean, that's a 30 million per year guaranteed sum from Nike, but the real value is attached to the number of units sold on Liverpool merchandise, which is about 20%, I think. So if you think about it, if they're increasing their brand value in Asia and their kind of supporter base, then that translates into more sales of shirts, and that ergo that means more money for Liverpool through their deal with Nike.
Yeah, they got Ian Doyle running the streets of Bangkok, waving the Liverpool flag, and everyone wants a piece of it. Yeah,
Liverpool might have something to say about that if it's Doyle.
Yeah, exactly. Know exactly where you're coming from with that. But in terms of then Manchester United being out there at the same time, as you say, we're recording prior to the game. It's been dubbed the match. I know Erik ten Hag in his press conference was asked about it, and the locals really wanting to see a feisty encounter, really is as close to what they would see in the Premier League. We know that's not to be the case. It's the first pre-season run out for both clubs, but it is a huge attraction regardless of when it is in their preparations for the new season that these two teams meet out there. And I'm sure is probably the only show in town today for the football-loving public out there.
Yeah, and I think that there'll be an expectation, given the fact that there's a lot of sponsors attached to this match as well. They've sold a lot of rights in terms of the sponsorship of the game, obviously the media rights. So there'll be an expectation that there is an element of a competitive nature and some, you see the big names, which I think will happen. But yeah, the power of these two football clubs in terms of their branding overseas is huge. So this will be literally, as you say, it'll be the only show in town. It'll be the hottest ticket in town. And given the fact that football fans in Southeast Asia have been starved of having these kind of games for the past couple of years, that only adds to the excitement around it, because the domestic leagues in Thailand and Singapore have been continuing, they're not at the level of anywhere near the Premier League, and their heroes remain. In the Premier League, you only have to have a look at Tottenham to see how powerful having individual players as brands can be. I mean, they're over in Korea, and the song and the whole brand in there is enormous. So I find it intriguing how the dynamic kind of has changed. I mean, football clubs are usually led by where their brand is strongest, where they go, because they want to make sure that they kind of take the lion's share of the market. And kicking off with the game against United means that immediately all eyes are on them in Asia, and I think that will be something which is incredibly lucrative, because look back, Liverpool don't itemise their pre-season, how much they make their revenues from pre-season in their accounts. Manchester United do. So the last time that they included that was 2018, 19, maybe 2019, 20. When they went to Australia, and it was, I think they made just shy of 13 million. with everything else back on board now, I imagine the rights for this game have been sold. I imagine Liverpool, they're probably clearing 10 million easily on this. So it's incredibly lucrative going out there. They're not just doing it for just an exhibition match. It's got real commercial value to these things, and having these revenue streams back on board is kind of manna from heaven for those behind the scenes.
How much equally, and like you say, it's not itemized in the accounts, and equally it wouldn't be out for more and more months anyway down the line. But in terms of kind of that lucrative nature of it and showing off the brand, how big then is it as well that Liverpool have done their transfer business that we expect, or at least by and large, and the biggest acquisition in Darwin Núñez being on this tour, and actually the first time he's seen as a Liverpool player, other than when he obviously put pen to paper on his move from Benfica, is when he gets out there to Asia and the fans get to see him for the first time training with his new teammates.
I think the interest would have been there, whether from the Asian public, whether or not Núñez was playing or not. But what it does is it creates another layer of intrigue from not only fans back at home, but those around the world, those in South America who want to see how Núñez is getting. So you all of a sudden you have a global audience of people just wanting tuning in for various reasons. So I expect LFC TV Go's kind of subscription base is kind of rocketed for this game in the past few days. It's going to be something which is commercial partners will latch onto, and also it'd be interesting to see kind of the demographics of Liverpool. The South American market is something which is ultimately eventually going to be quite lucrative for Liverpool, I think. They've got Diaz, his first full pre-season with Liverpool, so people expected big things from him, and then you've got Núñez, obviously. And obviously the people like Alisson Becker and Fabinho are already firmly rooted in the Liverpool firmament. So I do think that this will be one of the games for pre-season that attracts one of the. I think it's going to surely it will attract one of the largest audiences we've ever seen for a pre-season game in terms of being watched online, because there's so many different factors at play. I mean, it's like a big melting pot of all different dynamics. United fans are going to be tuning in for not only because it's their team, but it's Ten Hag, a new era. Liverpool fans, I want to see Núñez, and the same with fans around the world. I just think it's really intriguing the way everything has aligned. I think Liverpool and FSG will find this. It's all kind of a perfectly come together for them ahead of what is kind of a triumphant return to pre-season tours, which they're hoping will be not disrupted for the future.
Is it a case then, you mentioned right at the top, and we've spoken just about Ian Doyle a little bit on the show, but in terms of him being out there in Thailand and seeing, as you say, the pendulum swinging certainly towards Liverpool, but financially and commercially, we know the giant that Manchester United are and have been. I mean, for Liverpool, how difficult is it for them to overcome that? And I suppose for FSG is a case of reaping what they've sowed for many, many years, because they've been doing these tours for a number of years, and now they're at the height of their power. I suppose is the point at which they can then capitalise on that and overtake the previous big players.
United's issue has been the lack of success, which, while you can cope with one or two seasons of disappointment, this has been a decade of kind of managed decline almost, hasn't it? And that will rub off eventually. And not just, it's almost going to be moving into a new generation of football fans who are picking, the game up. Not just the existing fans who'd already attached themselves to Manchester United, long ago. This is about a different generation of fans who are coming through, and they won't want to be, they'll want to follow the biggest teams with the best players who are achieving the most success. I mean, that's the way it goes. I mean, I don't support. If I wasn't from Chester, I don't think I'd be supporting Chester. So it's one of those things where you are, if you're all those miles away in Asia, then you're going to want to watch the best teams and the best players and tune into that week in, week out, and become part of a kind of a global family and supporter base. But for FSG, I think they'll find it easier to start to leverage those kind of, pull on those levers and make more money. I mean, United have already secured a few sponsorship deals this summer. I think they've got DXC on the sleeves, Tezos on the training gear, etc., or someone like that on the training gear. All worth uplifts on previous deals. Now Liverpool they're coming to the table during this cycle a bit later than everyone else, but having more success than most. So I expect them to be able to lift a lot of those deals up considerably, in line with United or possibly surpassing United in some areas. And I imagine an increased presence in Asia and a stronger brand will mean that they'll be able to raise some of the values of their partnerships in that region considerably as well. I mean, because ultimately they'll get a point where they'll become the hottest ticket in town for big Asian business who wants to kind of attach itself to Premier League football. They'll be a more attractive proposition than Manchester United in the not too distant future, unless that's already happened.
Yeah, and it certainly feels like that, doesn't it? The capitalising on that success, but equally the innovation that Liverpool show on the pitch, but off the pitch as well in how they go about these commercial deals. You've already mentioned Nike and kind of the units sold, but the way in which they actually look to really capitalise specifically on each deal, not maybe always just go for the biggest number, but play the long game on deals.
Yeah, and I think they could have had guaranteed sums greater than Nike, but again, it's a longer term, isn't it? I mean, that Nike deal factors into a number of things. LeBron James is their number one athlete. LeBron James is a 1% owner of FSG, a former stakeholder in Liverpool, and so all these things tie in together. I mean, FSG invested in Spring Hill. LeBron James's digital kind of media company, same Redbird Capital Partners, or 11% owners of FSG. They invested in that. So all these things there is a whole network of these things coming together. So the Nike deal made a lot of sense. So, but Liverpool tend to structure deals whereby there's value on both sides. They're also quite big on making sure that they have a kind of community value as well. So a lot of partners now, they're not just looking at where can we get boards around stadiums. They're looking at various other aspects. How can we help things like the LFC Foundation? How can we make some kind of difference to the local area, etc. So all these things are factored in. So I think, and Liverpool, given we've seen recently, there's been a spate of sponsorship deals that have been taken up which haven't gone down particularly well. In Liverpool's case, the NFT drop didn't probably got the reception that they were maybe expecting, which is why they didn't go so heavy into it. But I know Liverpool were talking to a number of potential firms from industries when they're looking at front of shirt sponsorship. I mean, Standard Chartered but remaining in play there, but they were talking to firms from travel industry, finance, and also kind of things like emerging technologies like blockchain and cryptocurrency. And obviously that's what gets people a bit prickly about it. So I think Liverpool have to be more careful than most, don't they, in terms of how they go about the sponsorships they enter into. There's more of an element of being aware of the traditions and the thoughts and feelings of the people of the football club you represent. So that maybe narrows the scope somewhat for them, but also in the flip side of that some commercial partners see a lot more value in that type of relationship because it's more thoughtful. Whereas we only seen in the past few days Manchester City entered into a partnership with a crypto firm, an Asian-facing betting company with which is registered in the Isle of Man and has a website which isn't live yet. All those type of things, So Liverpool have always got to be slightly more careful about how they go about things.
Yeah, no, most definitely. Let's move away from the tour specifically though, and talk about other things. And just quickly, I know it's a couple of weeks old now, but we've not really spoken too much about Mohamed Salah's contract. I know we very much were looking ahead to how Liverpool could potentially structure a kind of deal to get it done. Last time we did have a Bottom Line podcast, and since then, of course, the deal has been done, but that again just shows the innovation, creative ways in which Liverpool get these deals done. We understand what £350,000 a week is kind of basic pay. Then within that, the continued idea of incentivized contracts. So the fact that Liverpool don't overstretch unless they have that success coming in, which again, you said before, it's all a network of things. The success then folds more into these tours and building profits in other areas of the globe.
Absolutely. I mean, the Mo Salah contract is one. I mean, without doubt, when they are, they're going away from not entirely, but they've had to break structure in some respects to make this happen. They couldn't just do it based on incentivized contracts, but they've managed to lean on that as best they can. I mean, incentivized contracts are something which FSG not just FSG. I mean, US owners in particular quite like incentivized contracts because they are, when you succeed, everyone else succeeds. So, the team succeeds, so you get more prize money, everything's more lucrative. So you can meet those costs. But FSG will know that with having Salah as part of the team makes their chances of succeeding on the pitch far greater, which will undoubtedly bridge that gap between the extra money that they're paying him. I mean, Champions League success becomes, more, and it's only getting more and more valuable, the Champions League from 2024, from when it undergoes a kind of the reform comes in with the Swiss model. So all these things are only going to get more and more valuable. So having someone like Salah on board is crucial, because I think they probably realise that they would have to spend more than that to find a suitable replacement for him in the market, and it's not good optics for some commercial partners who think you've lost Mane or you've lost Salah in the same window. I mean, I don't think they would have allowed Mane to go as willingly as they would have if they would have lost Salah, but as well. But yeah, they've managed to make it work at last, and we can finally put that one to bed. I mean, and there'll be a number of commercial aspects which they're quite happy about. I mean, he's the most prominent Muslim footballer on the planet, and that allows them an in into a huge demographic of football fans and also commercial partners in those kind of territories. So all that's a welcome bonus. It won't have the same impact as the likes of, there's only, I think, if you're looking at truly changing the commercial dynamic of a football club, you can only really sign Messi, Ronaldo, Neymar, potentially Mbappe. The rest, there's a layer beneath that, which means they aren't as marketable. I'd say Haaland and Salah fall into that bracket just underneath there. But for Liverpool, the overriding factor is the competitive edge it gives them and how much better it makes them, and the money that can be accrued from prize money. They have a greater chance of achieving with Salah in the team. The commercial benefits are welcome, but they're not they've not probably what's been the tipping point here.
No, definitely. Let's talk then about competition benefits and things like that. And you mentioned the Champions League, the reform that's set to undergo. And if only there was a league structure where they were guaranteed shed loads of cash that came in every single year, that effectively became a closed shop that they couldn't not be in. Sorry, no, I'm not on about the Champions League reform. I'm on about, Dave, the European Super League. And I suppose, what are we, 2 years past, or a year, sorry, getting on to 15 months, are we past it kind of being launched, and finally now kind of court proceedings seem to be happening, and what is happening there, and what's likely, not the likely outcome, but what are we expecting? Because from my understanding, last time I read, Barcelona, Real Madrid, Juventus are still all expecting to play each other, aren't they?
They know that Barcelona, Real Madrid and Juventus know full well that the Super League doesn't happen without the buy-in of English football clubs. It just doesn't. They're not individually as clubs. They're very valuable. They have huge marketing appeal, but without English clubs, English football is what drives the media revenues and forward, really, because that's where broadcasters see the value across the globe. So they know without English football clubs, there's no Super League. But what they're trying to do is make sure that road is clear for the future. So at a time when they can all reconvene, if they do, and present something which is workable, which fans can get on board with, which will appeal, not this, not the slapdash nonsense of a fiasco that we saw in April of last year, which was just dumped on a web holding page, which like a sixth former had done it, telling us all that the foundations of European football as we know it were about to be shaken to their very core.
That would be generous to my sixth form work, to be fair, but I know exactly what you mean.
I was adept at clip art in sixth form. So. But yeah, it's there are so this is all about UEFA trying to protect their own interests. They know full well that their argument is that if you want to go and create a competition on your own, fine, but are not allowed to take part in our competitions. So Real Madrid and Juventus and Barcelona argue that's against anti-competition rules and it's unfair. They monopolise the football industry. So that's what the argument lies at, really. This isn't about Barcelona, Real Madrid, and Juventus trying to recreate the Super League and get everyone back on board. That ship has sailed. I mean, English clubs especially, they've stepped away from it now. They've realised how hostile the atmosphere was in kind of response to its launch. Liverpool they've gone to the creation of a supporters board so that supporters would have to give consent for anything like this to happen in the future again. But in the eyes of kind of Andrea Agnelli and Florentino Perez and Juan Laporta, what they want is a path of no obstruction moving forward in the future, so that if there is a time when this comes back to the table where they can find something workable, there isn't any hoops for them to jump through. They can just go ahead and do it. But UEFA obviously are worried about that. That's part of the reason why they tried to head off some of that with the reformation of the Champions League. There's more money available for the biggest clubs. There's extra games. The revenues rise. There's extra places in there which were being discussed for historical performance. So there's a lot of that going on. So UEFA, I think they've probably done enough to head off that threat, really. But while I don't think it doesn't take a genius to see that Agnelli, Perez, and Laporta don't like taking no for an answer. I mean, they've effectively, Barcelona and Real still remain the two biggest teams in the world in terms of their market value, etc. So, there's an element of those two. They also need it a bit more than most, you kind of feel, because it's they don't have the same revenues in Serie A or La Liga. So, there's the need is greater for them, less so from the Premier League. But all they're trying to do is make sure that in the future they have a clear run at it, as and when, if and when these teams reconvene and find a workable plan forward.
We'll have to wait and see how it does all play out. But that wraps us up for the latest edition of The Bottom Line here on the Blood Red channel. From myself, Guy Clarke, and Dave Powell, thanks for joining us. It's bye for now.